Most breaches are caused by exploiting oversights in basic cybersecurity fundamentals, but complex hybrid multi-cloud infrastructures make cybersecurity hygiene challenging. Red Seal can help. It shows you what's on your network, how it's connected, and the associated risk across public cloud, private cloud, and physical environments. With Red Seal, you'll get control of your cybersecurity fundamentals so you can protect your organization from the inevitable attack vectors and reduce your cyber risk. For more information, visit securityweekly.com/Red Seal. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Paul Asadorian and Jason Albuquerque. Please join Ocean and Security Weekly at Salve Regina University Pell Center on Wednesday, March 18th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. for Ocean Cybersecurity Exchange Day. Visit securityweekly.com/Ocean 2020, that's OSHEAN 2020, to register for free. Also, we're having our first ever virtual training. It's happening on March 19th at 11 a.m. Eastern with Adam Keeler and Rob Harvey from Online Business Systems. We're going to talk about how to generate a complex SHA-256 hash password and then use password cracking tools to break it. Actually, Paul's going to do that because it's way over my head. Register for our upcoming trainings by visiting securityweekly.com, selecting the webcast training drop down from the top menu bar, and click registration. Gentlemen, we have not done articles in a few weeks, so here we go. It's been a long break.
I missed you guys.
It's good to be back in the saddle again, so to speak.
Absolutely. So much has happened in the world since we've last met.
Yes.
Oh, hysteria abound.
Oh,
yes.
Crazy. I was telling you earlier, my wife made me clean out every bottle of Corona in the fridge.
I've been just rubbing myself down with limes.
Oh, really?
As a defense for it. It's a known fact. Now we're going to get angry emails from people that are making light of.
I covered this. When did I cover this? Oh, last week on Security and Compliance Weekly.
Yeah.
There have been 18,000 deaths from the flu.
Yep.
There's over 32 million people infected with the flu, right? 18,000 flu deaths. And we've had, 10 coronavirus ones? It's a little blown out of proportion.
I feel you. But from what I'm seeing, I think I'm going to invest in toilet paper companies because a lot of people are stocking up.
Purell.
$80 a whack on Amazon,
right?
I think.
It's just crazy.
It's crazy. New York just announced its own sanitizer that's stronger than anybody else's. Supposedly it does a better job. So if you want the really good stuff, I guess you go to New York. Anyway.
It's all the chemicals in the sewer systems.
It's a classic example of FUD, right? I mean, we see that in security all the time. FUD can be a very powerful thing,
it is.
Actually, and force people into actions and force some of us to question whether those are the appropriate actions or responses to what's happening. We see it in breaches and incidents all the time.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's get into some leadership and communication news. I've had these articles for a little while because there's some good articles in here that I wanted to make sure we covered on the show. And the first one I set up was this book, The Great CEO Within. I have not read the book, but this article pulls out a couple interesting tips that I wanted to share because I thought they were really interesting for all leaders, right? When we think about some of the things that we have to do as leaders and some tips to be a better leader. And the one they highlight first, Jason, was really interesting. Schedule 2 hours each day to focus on your top goal only. Just block out 2 hours every day.
Sorry, which story is this?
You can work on it.
It's The Great CEO Within.
Oh, it is The Great CEO Within. Okay.
Actually, when this article came up and I did some research on it, the reviews are really high, 4.9 on Amazon for reviews, which is really good. And that's one of the pieces that I pulled out, and they called it essentialism, right? The pursuit of less to boil down, all your key concepts and focus areas. And I'm going to try this, honestly. I'm going to try as much as I possibly can. I may not be able to do every day, but I'm going to try to force 2 hours in my calendar, maybe every other day, to 100% focus on the strategic goals that I have. Whether it's for the quarter or for the year, I haven't figured that out yet, but I'm going to try this out for size. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough sometimes to block out, 2 hours every single day.
Yep.
Because there's so much stuff going on.
Agreed.
When you're running a business, Paul and I know this, we live this every single day, right? There's just so much stuff going on. And Jason, you have it too.
Yep.
How can you dedicate blocking out 2 hours every single day? But if you can, it allows you to really focus on some of those longer term strategic things that are hard to get to sometimes.
Yeah. From my perspective, no action is still an action. And if I say I'm going to put 2 hours in my calendar, even if I get an hour out of it, I'm eking some time out, right? Where if I wasn't, I just kind of try to pull from my calendar where I can. But this kind of force feeds it. And if I get interrupted, at least I've put some time into it. And I'm putting some action toward the goals that I want to achieve, and instead of letting the daily whirlwind kind of take over, right?
Right.
Because a lot of us get caught up in that daily whirlwind. We get focused on the initiatives of the day, or the problems of the day, or the things that are flying through the company that day, where this can kind of force feed some time to focus on strategic items.
Yeah, I just think 2 hours per day is really high.
Yeah, I agreed.
I'm not sure you're going to get back. I mean, maybe some people will. So I don't want to make blanket statements, and some people may be able to do that. I think for the majority of folks, 2 hours a day is way too much of a time commitment, and you're not going to get back that return on investment of your time.
Yeah. And for me,
I'd say start with once a week and work your way up would be my advice based on this article. And I don't want to say that the person's wrong or not, but my approach to this and advice would be start once a week. And maybe that's on a Saturday, a Sunday. Maybe you carve out some time early in the morning, late at night, rather than checking email, social media, writing code, which we're all guilty of in some capacity. Spend some time doing strategic planning.
Yeah. No, 100% agreed.
The other tip I took out of here was encouraging junior staff to speak up first in meetings so that they don't get biased by the senior management team. I thought that was also another really good tip out of this article is let the junior staff talk first.
Yeah, that's the way they're not influenced, right? So that's definitely something that I took from it as well. And then the other piece was about feedback, right? Different ways to solicit feedback from folks. So, share reactions, share emotional triggers, share opinions, and really be open and transparent when you're giving feedback. Because for me, I want to make sure that folks aren't afraid of giving me the real deal when they're speaking to me, right? So I want to make sure I have an open, transparent communication all the way down to technicians, right, that are on my team. So being able to solicit that feedback and give folks an environment where they feel open and free and comfortable giving that feedback is a huge thing for me. So I took that out of the article as well. Yeah.
Then I have a number of CISO articles in here. I think there's 3 of them, right? And I staged them in this way on purpose. The first one is CISOs who leave after 2 years may not finish what they start.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting in Dave is Eastlick. He's now at Chipotle. He used to be at Starbucks. He's also in the third article, by the way, on the stress side.
Right.
But he said, look, if you don't stay for the long haul, you may not be ready to help with the next transition of security. And this is an interesting concept, right? Because we know that the tenure for senior CISOs is 18 to 24 months. I think this article says 2.1 years.
Yep.
But an organization has to go through multiple transitions in its security programs. And he's seen these when he was at Starbucks. And he says, look, if you leave before 2 years, you don't necessarily get to finish what you start.
No, great.
Well, and I mean, technical projects, especially in those technical projects that require either cultural or process changes, take a long time. I mean, we know this, right?
Yep.
Our listeners know this. So if you leave too soon, you're just shortcutting that cycle, right? Maybe. And my concern is that if you're a new CISO, you come into an organization, and I'm not talking about startups. Startups move much faster.
Sure.
Maybe you don't even have a CISO position that is the more traditional role, right?
Yep.
But Matt, what you just said is that he worked for Chipotle and Starbucks. So large corporations, right, have a longer cycle for getting things done. My fear is that you come into CISO, you evaluate the state of security, which can take 6 months or longer, right?
Easy.
And then you put a plan in place, and it takes so much time for that plan to develop that now you've got to start over, right? And what's that iterative? It kind of ties into our first article, right? What's that iterative cycle where you may have to shortcut things and go, that project, when it completes, it's going to be outdated by the time it completes, so maybe we need to pull it back in.
Right.
And that management of those processes, I think, is one of the things that make a really effective CISO.
Yeah.
And to this article's point, you gotta be in it for the long haul, because these aren't in a large corporation like Chipotle or Starbucks, or you pick a Fortune 2000 company.
Yep.
Stuff takes a long time to get done.
Yeah, the one good thing that I think he did was he actually took a cybersecurity program and blew it out to like a life cycle, right? And he equated it to like an S curve. And it's, he used the terms build, strengthen, and differentiate. For me, I've always used the terms, and it aligns with this, run, grow, and transform, right? When I walk in the door, I want to take an organization from that run mode, keeping the lights on, right, making things work, to that strengthen the organization, like he says, take it to grow. How am I helping grow this organization? And ultimately, the end game for me is, how do I create an environment to leverage security to truly transform the organization? And once you get to transform, I think that's kind of the leap. Now you've gone through an entire life cycle with an organization. You've built the program. You've helped them grow. You've helped them transform as a business. Now go on to your next, your next challenge or your next organization.
But I think the major challenge is, especially based on some recent shows we've done, right, is being able to acquire technical staff, train the learn about the new technologies, train them on the right technologies,
absolutely,
implement the right technologies. By the time you finish that, the technologies have changed if you're not iterating through those very quickly. I mean, we did an interview on Paul Security Weekly that looked at all of the Azure and Microsoft Active Directory and security product offerings. It was probably the most acronyms we've ever had on a single segment. I mean, Tyler was talking, and like every other word was an acronym.
Sure.
And I was like, I don't know what a few of those even mean. Like, hold on, back up.
It's tough.
Let's explain it. So if we're struggling, we cover this stuff all the time, to understand what all the acronyms are. Imagine the cycle.
Absolutely.
Well, you live it every day.
I live it every day,
How to identify that new technology, either for your business or your clients, that we then have to learn and practice and put into operations. And how do we do that quickly and also free up time in my daily operations to have time to go do that?
That's why a 2-year stint doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be able to build a program that's sustainable. And I always talk to my teams about, think about products as Legos. If I architect this correctly, I should be able to pull a yellow Lego out and stick a green Lego in anytime I need to, right? Because I've architected the program, I've architected the technologies correctly, where a vendor is a vendor, a product is a product, right? It serves a purpose, it brings a service to the organization. And I want to build it strategically.
There's so many analogies going through my head right now with Legos.
But you understand what I'm saying?
If you leave it on the floor, someone could step on it, and it really hurts. So you don't want to leave too many Legos on the floor. And then there's ones that aren't compatible with each other. And then someone's always throwing new Lego pieces at you.
But honestly, right? You got to build a program that's sustainable, right? And that's the key. The key is to build that kind of.
Most businesses haven't done that from the start.
That's right.
Because there's especially when we're talking about Microsoft Windows.
In 2 years, we'll never cut it. You'll never be able to take an organization from run, grow, transform in 2 years. It's not going to happen.
I mean, is it true that Amazon built AWS for internal purposes to streamline their processes and then made it a product? I read something that was kind of touching on that point. But think about how long Amazon's been building those pieces to allow them to do business in the way that they do, and then creating an entire product out of it.
Right.
Sound familiar?
Yes, it does. Yeah. Our call earlier.
Yeah.
So this ties into the second article, which is most CISOs are ready to move jobs if something better comes along. So we just talked about 2 years isn't enough.
Right.
But then we have this environment with pretty much zero unemployment.
Supply and demand, right?
Yeah.
That's what complicates it. Yeah.
Exactly. Where CISOs are ready to move when the next opportunity comes up. And what I thought the stats were pretty interesting, right? Only 7% of U.S. CISOs were not actively looking, compared to 11% in Asia and 16% in the UK and Ireland. Those are staggering statistics. 93% of U.S. CISOs are looking for a job.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense because if you think about this, CISOs may be in environments where they're not 100% supported from a security program perspective too, right?
Right.
So they may not have the seat at the table. They may still report into traditional IT.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be able to have a seat with the board of directors and being able to make strategic decisions. So it's only natural, knowing the market and seeing how some organizations are moving, to want to test the waters and say, hey, can I go to an organization that supports security, is behind security, is going to give me a seat at the table? Of course, right? Of course I'm going to take that opportunity to go look at the market, especially in a negative unemployment rate. I mean, it's the demand is there. But it does not help. It doesn't help the trend in the last article, though. Right?
Right.
All that does is it perpetuates the problem.
Yeah, and that leads into the third article, which is the whole stress side of the job, right? So I've got high turnover, less than 2 years to try to get goals accomplished. Sure. That adds a lot of stress to the role as a whole. And so this article talks to 4 different CISOs, and Dave Eastlick is on here again, about how to handle some of those stressors. But these 3 articles create this really, I think, vicious cycle for the CISOs right now.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed. Yeah, it is. It's a vicious cycle, and I mean, I can go through all 4 of these different CISOs and kind of, pick where I agree and where I don't agree. One of the ones I don't agree with is the CISO from Allstate basically says stress is directly proportional to the expertise of the CISO. I strongly disagree with that because
it's an external factor.
Yeah, I mean, you may be a CISO who has 20 years of experience in the industry, but you're in an organization that doesn't have the budget, doesn't have the support. That's going to give you added stress. Doesn't have the talent, right? So these are the things that I kind of pulled out. It's more than that.
I also think this may be somewhat controversial, but that organizations that have a CISO, right, are putting too much on one person's plate. I think there's a lot of organizations that really need to separate those responsibilities, right?
I agree.
So we look at, let's take software companies as an example. I believe there should be an internal CISO dealing with IT issues. There should also be a product and externally facing CISO that's dealing with how do people log in and authenticate to our software? How do we deal with privacy risks? How do we deal with the SDLC for our product, right? Then the internal CISO is worried about the ops and the plumbing and users and phishing and all that stuff. I mean, that gets lumped on the same person's plate. It's bad. I can even see that in a university as an example. There were definitely 2 distinct tracks there, right, having come from that background. There was the internal IT stuff, of course, but in most colleges even and universities, there's multiple schools within that all had their own infrastructure. I would appoint a CISO to interface with the rest of the academic. It's a very, very different, I mean, there are some overlap, but I found it was very different how you solve security problems for researchers and academics and universities versus how you would solve it on the central IT side. And certainly there's a lot of collaboration, but I would distribute these responsibilities. I
agree.
I think security is certainly important enough. And technology has become just part of the way we do everything in our lives today.
The only thing I would challenge that on is there should be one level of accountability overseeing all of those disparate CISOs. Reason being is as a business, we want to make sure we're realizing economies of scale. And to have 2 different business units within your organization doing the same thing but with different products or different strategies, that starts to hit the financial side of the aisle, right? And part of my responsibility as the CISO, the overarching CISO for the entire company, is to make sure we're spending money in the right places, we're realizing economies of scale, operational efficiencies across the entire organization.
See, but to me, that could be a CEO role that's managing 2
as long as somebody is accountable for that entire strategy.
Yeah, and
I agree.
But I look at the CEO as owning that role.
And then
but I think the challenge is, to your point, Jason, a little bit, is in very large organizations, it's not the CEO. Right? It has to be somebody else because you've got risk involved, you've got compliance involved, you have the different security layers that Paul described. The CEO probably isn't that.
And the CEO isn't going to understand it either, right? Nor should they. They're going to rely on a subject matter expert to understand that and give feedback upstream. At the end of the day, I think we agree that the strategy is it's a shared responsibility across the entire company, right? Yes. So for my organization, it's a shared responsibility between all of the leaders within our organization to have a component of security within their business unit, right? And they have a liaison who reports back to us because they understand the business of their business unit, and they can translate the business requirements and needs back to us, so that way we can effectively design security controls and not stop the business or be a roadblock. We can be front-ended and be in the DNA of every project and initiative that happens within the organization, right? Because we have connections to all the business units. What the CEO and the ownership of our company, in conversations when they decided to spin up its own security business unit, is that they were in support of having it be a shared responsibility. So all the weight is not on my shoulders, it's across the entire organization, right? Our HR leader owns some of it, our services leader owns some of it, our CFO owns some of it, right? And
well, you're just an anomaly.
And it's not an anomaly.
And you're doing it right. I have to say,
at the end of the day, it was very important to me when we built the program and built the role that was known out of the gate. It has to be known out of the gate that security is a shared responsibility across this entire organization, because one team and one person is never going to get done effectively. And ownership in the board needed to understand that. And they did, and they went all in, right? And they allowed us to build a program that has shared responsibility across every single business unit. It works out well. It really does.
Yeah, and I think Dave Eastlick actually spoke about this in his statement. He said, developing a strong team, building relationships, growing trust with key stakeholders, and the ability to align executive leadership is key to success. That's what you just described, Jason.
No, it works out really, really well, right? Because then again, you don't have this heavy burden on one team to accomplish it all for the organization.
And I think it's where Jason has kind of thoughts and ideas all come together on the same page, that it shouldn't, the weight of responsibility shouldn't fall on one role and be skewed that much. It should be however you want to divvy it up. I mean, maybe you have a chief privacy officer, a chief compliance officer, and you split it up by discipline rather than, however you want to split it up, it absolutely should be a shared responsibility.
Yeah, it's a must these days. Yeah. Has to be.
In your storyline talks a little bit about the next article, which is innovation, right? Truly has to, it's not about just iteration, right? She talks a lot in this article about, we say we innovate as technology companies, but all we're doing is really just doing A/B testing and iterating through.
Right.
True innovation requires risk. It requires starting with a blank slate. And it sounds like part of what happened with you, Jason, was they kind of started with a blank slate. They said, look, this is how we're going to design our security program. It's going to be shared responsibility. It's not something that is just an iteration of the previous role or an augmentation of the CIO
It was
role,
a 100% reincarnation, right? It's not working. We know it's not working in the industry. We know as a technology service provider, we need to change and we need to be at the front of this. So let's build it correctly. And we all work together on building the program the right way. What I feel is the right way, at least.
Right, which means you started from scratch. But then you also brought in the second point she talks about, which is instilling family values, right? So reaching out across to the other teams, right? Building those relationships as part of that initiative instead
100%.
of,
I mean, I guess a case in point is the fact of, we just talked about it, in the beginning when we did the intro about, the COVID-19 scare that's going on. Obviously, customers, we have 6,000 customers. We knew as an organization they were going to be sensitive to this. So the first thing that ended up happening was our HR leader and our executive VP of services said, we need to create a SWAT team, right? That will be able to handle any questions or concerns or anything that might be happening with our clients. The first thing they did was they picked up the phone and they called me and said, we want you to be the third leg of that stool and help us build the strategy around how we're going to manage this with our customers.
Right. Yeah, because security interfaces with all those
exactly, right? So at that point, it's like, wow, I'm on the SWAT team for business continuity and our pandemic plan with our customers. And, it truly shows the partnership around the organization and that they're thinking security first. HR services, we're a services company, and then security. Those were the three pillars that started this SWAT team, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Let's just hope you continue to use your limes in your Coronas and you'll be good.
That's right. It's important.
This last article I pulled in here was the new executive compensation strategy for the future. I want your takes on this because I'm curious how you're aligned to the old versus the new. I'd love your take on this.
No, I think this is a go forward strategy, because this is the conversation that we had this past year at our executive leadership forum. Right? Executive leaders from all over the country came together and say, basically creating strategies for 2020 for our company. And this was part of the conversation that came out of HR, was how can we be different? How can we start incentivizing our teams for the long term, right? And make it based on mission critical, purpose driven type incentives versus the traditional things, right? So yeah, I think this is going to become the new norm, right? It's really outcome focused, and that's the conversations that we were having. Is what are the outcomes that we want to achieve over the course of 2020, and then how do we build compensation plans around that?
Yeah, we've come a long way, certainly. In the beginnings of the NSA, they would promote people basically based on longevity.
Yeah,
right. So
sure.
it's, you just basically you got
time
you've been here this
time
you know, this and you move up, and they noticed that a lot of things were suffering because of that. And I believe it was General Keith Alexander that came in and changed that model to be incentive based.
Yep.
And some of those first few folks that were promoted based on performance and incentives would go on to basically lay the foundation for the TAO group and a lot of other activities that, that are controversial, of course, and others that absolutely helped, defend the nation and gain intelligence on our enemies.
Yeah.
So.
But for him, it was easy to align mission, right?
Yes.
I mean, mission was very clear in those directives, which is what you said, Jason.
Yep.
Move it more to mission purpose-based.
Yeah.
I thought the other interesting shift here is away from the shareholder and to the stakeholder. And that's an interesting concept, because we've talked about Facebook a lot, right? Shareholder outcome is one thing for Facebook, but stakeholder output is really different in the way that Facebook runs today.
Oh no, agreed. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I would say we're still a hybrid, right? There's still a financial component there, but ultimately our mission is the success of our clients. So a lot of that is our stakeholders are our clients, and it's how do we measure the success of our customers because they do business with us, because we're helping them, right? So that's where a lot of that outcome-driven incentive is coming, making our customers better, right?
Yeah. I'm curious, one last piece on this is, do you have non-financial incentives as well as financials in your structure today?
Yes,
okay.
100%. It's a hybrid, yep.
Can you describe some of those non-financial incentives? I'm just curious, because most people are used to a financial incentive.
Sure. So from our perspective, it's about the maturity of our program, right? So we have a third-party auditor coming in who audits us on an annual basis, and a lot of it is the result of that, which is the non-financial side of it. And the other is customer engagement. How much time am I spending with customers, talking to them about security within Carousel, right? Our program within Carousel, helping them mature their programs, right? And these aren't opportunities for us. This is relationship building. So a lot of it is on that too. How much engagement I have with customers, how many executive briefing center meetings I'm running, right, and facilitating for our customers. That's not an opportunity. That's not a direct opportunity. Now, could it have connections to opportunities later? Absolutely. But it's more about how much I'm engaging with the customer, how much I'm helping their executive team mature from a security and compliance perspective.
And it's building the relationship for the long haul, which potentially has a financial benefit,
100%.
but it's not
tied to an opportunity, right? There's no opportunity number I enter in Salesforce for it. There's none of that. It's literally building relationships. Our goal is to be a business partner, not a transactional company, right? So to be a business partner, you need to know your customers and know their needs and learn what drives them as an organization and learn their goals, right? When I have an executive briefing center meeting, part of it is, all right, I'm going to do an operational overview of what Carousel brings to the table. But the second part of that is I want you to do a reverse report out to us. I want to know what your goals are. I want to know what you want to achieve over the course of the next year, the next 2 years, because I want to learn more about you and your organization. So that's a big piece of what I do in my executive briefing center meetings, because I want to learn, right? If I don't learn about our customers, I'll never know what we need to be doing better internally.
Right. And where you take the program going forward.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Awesome. Gentlemen, always a fantastic discussion. Glad we could all get back together and talk articles this week. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening, and we'll see you next week on Business Security Week.